So welcome everyone to this conversation. We are with His Excellency Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. And in this conversation, we want to talk about the youth agenda. My name is John Irongo. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of the District of Columbia, and I'm also a student leader here. And my co-host.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Maureen Kenyua. I'm an engineer, I'm an educator, I'm a farmer, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm very excited to sit here and ask some questions about Kenya's future.
Okay. Now, we'll start by our guest, Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, former president of Kenya and also presidential candidate in the forthcoming general election in Kenya. So, Your Excellency, maybe you'd ask, why do you want to be president? And also, day one, you're elected as president, you get into office. What's the first thing that you tackle?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you, you two,
Yes.
for inviting us to this amazing institution. Because I think your viewers may want to ask why University of the District of Columbia. I'm so impressed because I'm told it's the first public university, or the only public university,
Correct.
in Washington, D.C. And so we are honored, along with my team, to be hosted by you and to celebrate achievements of some of our Kenyan friends, Kenyan citizens. To hear of Maureen, her own accomplishments are amazing. Engineer, teacher, farmer. This is the Kenya spirit. And you, Irungu, as you finalize your PhD in cybersecurity or artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Everybody is talking about artificial intelligence. But first of all, I need to say I'm honored to be here because I came to attend the 74th anniversary of the National Prayer Breakfast, which is organized jointly by the houses of Senate and Congress of the United States. And it so happens that later this month, this great nation will be celebrating 250 years since the independence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is quite a number compared to who we are in Kenya, celebrating how many years since independence from the UK, from Britain.
60.
So, significant time. Of course, it's very cold. The weather here is tough. We're not used to this kind of thing. Last week, almost like tomorrow is Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah, last Sunday I was in Othaya and I was in Murang'a, and I can tell you the weather was quite different. And so we're really happy to be here. Now, to come to your question, why do I want to be president? I want to tell you, first of all, it will not be the first time, because I ran for president in 2007 when the country blew up. And since that time, I had the occasion to deputize the Honorable Raila Odinga, our late brother, who passed on in October last year. I think a record 15 years. If you look at the election cycles after every 5 years, so 15 political years supporting Raila Odinga, because I didn't want the country to blow up again like it did in 2007, although it was my constitutional right to run. But I felt, since I was the third candidate after Mwai Kibaki and Raila and myself, let me support Raila. And that was after serious consultations. And the agenda then was we wanted to change our country. Change has invaded Kenya almost soon after independence, by the way, because people expected after the colonial state, life was going to be quite different. And our founding fathers, Mr. Jomo Kenyatta, and people like, Tom Mboya, and I'm talking about Tom Mboya and Kenyatta, you recall how they organized the first Kenyan airlift of Kenyan students between, of course, JFK Kennedy's administration and his brother, who was then the Attorney General, Robert Kennedy was a special friendship with Tom Mboya. They organized the first airlift of Kenyan students because they wanted to help this newly independent African state to capacity build so that then it can run its affairs. That is, as a result of all that, I'm sure you may have noticed many, many Kenyans who have studied in universities in America and have gone back to assist our country. But when it comes to political leadership, first of all, you remember that time KANU won elections and then KADU, Majimbo constitution, a lot of confusion about that, and eventually ending up with a single party dictatorship, which Kenyans did not like. So I've been able to see, I was not in Mzee Kenyatta's government, but so happens that I was in Moi's government, and young, I went into politics as a millennial, just after Gen Z. That's when I say that we don't want to tell young Kenyans the time will come for them to leave, but from my own experience, you can actually make it a career to change your country. So I understand, therefore, the current challenges with Gen Z generation and the revolution that they went through, and the millennials. So then I served, of course, under President Moi, then Kibaki, then Uhuru. I didn't serve with Uhuru; it's a contemporary. But at some stage, after he defeated me and Raila, controversially, until they had to do their own handshake. When they did the handshake, I served as a special envoy to South Sudan. So even then, I was able to help. Therefore, I've watched our country's political development and the change that the Kenyans have always wanted to see. And I think I'm best suited, therefore, to deal with that challenge. And that's why, for a second time, this time around, want to run for president. And I think a lot of Kenyans are expecting me to do exactly that, because as it is, our country is hurting. That's one urgent issue. The urgency of the now situation. When in 2024, young Kenyans came out to the streets and did peaceful demonstrations in accordance with our country's constitution, which, by the way, is a heritage document of President Kibaki, legacy of President Kibaki, whom I had the privilege to serve as his vice president. And during that time, we put money in Kenyans' pockets. Kenyans were able to see the fruit of their labor. In fact, when we said Kibaki Tosha in 2002, because that is credited to Raila Odinga, but we were a team, and Raila asked a question, Kibaki, si anatosha? We went on to have the most democratically elected president since independence, Moi Kibaki, during his first term. And so Kenyans were then adjudged as the most optimistic nation on earth, because we're saying we even make our police force serve the people, utumishi kwa wote. But and some of them were arrested by the citizen arrest, because they said we don't want corruption. Any police officer who was seen asking for a bribe was actually arrested by the citizens and frog marched to police station. That was a moment of change. But after a while, we seem to have lost it. And the same police who were then supposed to change have now taken a back step. Just before I came, my colleagues and I had to walk to Jogo House to talk to Inspector General of Police, Mr. Kanja, and we are addressing him on a very important issue. Imagine from being the kind of police force Kenyans wanted to now a police force which is killing citizens, which is even tear gassing children in churches, as happened a week ago in the church in Othaya. I mean, completely the opposite of what Kenyans expected. Places of worship are sacred places, and we're dealing with an administration which believes they were prayed into office, and they have said it, but they are prayed into office, and they are now adulterating or making nonsense of worship, which again is a constitutional right. So look at that shift by the police, who are supposed to have reformed. Now they're even worse, which is why we must run for president and get the country back again to constitutionalism and a country that is run in accordance with Constitution 2010, a country that will be under the rule of law. So I thought those are the reasons. That now the same police force have gone a step further. They are now escorting goons to disrupt political rallies, to attempt assassination. Because what happened in Nyeri, I think we still dealing with that issue. We said, by the way, we are going back on the 16th of this month to find out from Inspector General whether we will have arrested these goons. And not only goons, the officers who are supposed to, because the goons themselves do not have tear gas capacity, and the trauma they caused in that community of worshippers, right? So we're going back there. And so reason after reason why we have to run and get our country back and give it the kind of change that has always escaped.
Well, thank you for that. And you've kind of touched on some of the things we'll get into discussion deeper. So the reason we're here for this interview is we want to create a space where we can get some clarity on what you're running on and also some accountability. Because as you've touched on, Kenya is quite at a crossroads. We're not just talking about to you as a candidate, but as an agent that can actually take a country that's in crisis and turn it around. So our goal is, with the questions we've prepared, to help us understand your views on what you're going to do about human rights, justice, education, labor, and another couple of other topics that we have. And they're all under the umbrella of the lived experience of the youth. So what we want is not just a ceremonial conversation, but a way to understand how you will serve Kenyans as a government official, whose voices you're going to listen to, whose lives you're going to protect, and whose futures are actually prioritized in your government. Potential government. So we're not asking for promises, we're asking for integrity.
Actually, Kenyans don't want to hear about promises.
Yes, I think we're sick and tired. So I'll have John touch on our first theme for youth and justice.
Yes, our first theme we'll talk about youth and justice, where we also mention issues to do with human rights. And as you've mentioned, we had the protests which we had by the young people who were protesting against the finance bill. And we've had young people being called by the state terrorists. And yet, most of these young people were demanding for economic justice. They were demanding for better governance. And as a result of the finance bill protest which we had, and most young people lost their rights, demanding for better governance, demanding for a fair tax regime. Now, if you're elected president, how would you ensure that the rights of young people, their freedom for expression, how would you ensure that their rights are guaranteed?
You know, Rungu, rights under the Constitution are everybody's rights. There are rights for the youth, there are rights for their parents. When they came out to the streets in June In fact, June the 25th of 2024, it's a watershed year, because these young people came out to petition their leaders in parliament and to tell them to receive their petition against the finance bill as it then was published. And what their leaders did, instead of waiting to receive the petition, they ran out of parliament. And of course, some of the leaders, including my own party members of parliament, went out to receive them, to receive the petition. But majority then escaped. But then the young people ended up breaching parliament. My own view as a constitutional lawyer is that the current parliament since that time was actually rendered illegitimate because they took off, and thereafter young people were shot, some by snipers. We went to see their bodies lying dead in hospitals, in the mortuaries, Kenyatta Hospital mortuary, the city mortuary. It was a sight you never want to behold in a country that calls itself independent and democratic. So the rights of these young people are, as I said, the rights of every Kenyan. And one of them, a year later, in 2025, called Jerry actually was arrested for trying to help Kenyans, because the National Assembly and the committee, the responsible committee for budgeting, said that Kenyans had invited public participation. And Jerry made it very easy. Now, poor girl was arrested. We had to go to court and get her out. She was not even charged with any offense because it was ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous arrest that I've ever seen. So young Kenyans know what they want. And I get the feeling they're still very angry. Remember, they said they were leaderless, they were tribeless. If you want to annoy them, you try to talk to them as if they from your tribe. They don't want that. And this is a generation that is going to bring final liberation to our country, because our biggest disease as a nation is tribalism. So my take is that these young people know. And on my part, and along with my colleagues, we will make sure that the rights under the Constitution, particularly Article 37, Kenyans have done a lot of civic education. They now know under Article 37, every Kenyan has a right to picket, to demonstrate, and provided, there's a little proviso, they do so unharmed. These young people were not harmed with anything. They just took a petition. And they caught world attention, even here in Washington. I'm sure the world has now known there's a generation in Kenya called the Gen Z, and not just in Kenya, they are worldwide. They are now worldwide, and they have caused change, literally forced change. Countries like Bangladesh, in Madagascar, even within the African continent. We saw recently they came out in Tanzania. Young people everywhere are saying, we are saying no to dictatorships, to countries that pretend they're democratic when they go ahead and steal elections. All right? Yeah. So in Ghana, in Malawi, and the movement, which has now come to be referred to as a one-term movement, is real. And Kenyans want, and young ones in particular, are so wired. Of course, there is a problem of joblessness. They are educated. Yes, when the President Kibaki and I, as his vice president, and our colleagues introduced free primary, and we actually made it compulsory, free primary education, which is also compulsory. You will recall one young man from Nyeri called Maruge, at age 84, decided to go to class 1. And President Bill Clinton was heard saying he would want to meet this Kenyan president and find out what miracle he has done. It was a true revolution in our education system. Those are the young people. who received free primary education and went ahead to become even university graduates. They know their rights. And as we celebrate that legacy of Kibaki, they themselves said, we cannot go backwards. Therefore, we demand transparency. We demand accountability. It is our right to know if you're overtaxing us, why are you doing it? And how are you using our taxes? So the problem we have, which is the more reason we must take over the country, God willing, is to make sure that you don't continue overtaxing Kenyans. There are all kinds of taxes, and I think our country is the most overtaxed country in the world. That is a submission I humbly make.
And
Maybe
we'll
I need to know
into-
whether there are others like that. Housing levy, now as we speak, NSSF, now Kenyans have to get at beginning of February, extra monies to go to NSSF, and there's a haste, I call it a haste, called housing fund, affordable housing fund, yeah, and there's something called social health assurance, which is benefiting only a few. It's part of a scam called the Andane deals, all right, where they even tried to take over our international airport, which is sort of a critical infrastructure linked with national security. So I can tell you, we will give the young Kenyans their constitutional rights so that they grow up to be citizens who will be proud of their country.
And speaking of accountability, can you tell us more how your administration will approach civilian oversight when it comes to actually prosecuting and investigating how and putting police accountable for the misconduct, not just during the protest, but other incidences that have followed?
Civilian oversight. You know, some policemen in Nandi County went ahead and found people having a good time in a bar, and they started shooting them, trying to do strange things. Instead of arresting those people straightforward and charge them, they are taken to an institution. It's one of the commissions called the Police Oversight Authority, called IPOA, and it is supposed to be independent. Mm-hmm. Members of Parliament from what we are now calling the alternative government, no longer united opposition, because we are preparing to take over. Mm-hmm. Went over to Muranga, and they almost killed again. Their cars vandalized. The matter was taken to the police headquarters. They went with their lawyers to IPOA, and as we speak, nothing has ever happened. So Kenyans are already accustomed to the need to have some kind of oversight. Because over the years, Kenyans have come to appreciate civic education, and they are really very clear about some of these things. But they are unhappy with some of these institutions that are apparently toothless. We will make sure that they develop some kind of teeth, even if they are milk teeth. So they are able to do something.
Could you define what you mean by teeth?
Teeth is not magego. It's not.
I know,
tooth.
Tangible. What are the tangible?
Yes, what I mean is, if somebody is given the responsibility to sit at an oversight institution, they must also be accountable. They must, at the end of the year, give account of what they have been able to do. All the cases that are referred to them, they must indicate as soon as possible what have they done, what practical steps have they taken to address those excesses, because normally these are police excesses, and people come out to complain, and therefore Kenyans don't know what is this IPOA, because nothing has come out of it. That's what I mean by the next team will have teeth. They will have ability. They will have ability to give account, ability to say, yeah, this is it, and publish. Not only publish, I think there's a requirement. In fact, even as we speak, there's a normal requirement we should publish some of these complaints. You've heard of other oversight authorities like the Anti-Corruption Commission
Yes,
and
yes.
Corruption Commission. They make some attempts here and there to do certain things. But no Kenyan believes that these things are all not state captured. You know, we've heard of state capture, as happened with a family in South Africa called the Guptas. Kenyan institutions have been state captured by the William Ruto administration. So that even Parliament itself is state captured. They only do the bidding of William Ruto. All right? So the next round of and I'm sure the JCs and others are watching to really look at the performance of their members of parliament, because they're the ones who should really be listening to the concerns of the population and articulate them. For example, in the matter of taxation, everybody knows a basic principle that there can be no taxation without representation. But then the representatives took off. So even that institution, the state capture of parliament by the executive, is an issue that we'll be dealing with in round one. I mean, within the first year, right? And I'm sure Kenyans will throw out a lot of these members of parliament who have been state captured, who have been compromised by William Ruto. Yeah.
And you have actually mentioned the issue of Jerry. And as we know, nowadays we are in the age of citizen journalism. And when it comes to issues to do with governance and also things such as even human rights, what we are seeing in Kenya right now is that there is an online censorship by the government. And of course, youth-led initiatives, they thrive in the digital age right now. And Jerry is a good example, actually.
Yeah.
She was trying to enlighten Kenyans about the finance bill, but she was censured. Now, you are elected president. What legal protection can you champion for so that when the youth want to express themselves, and especially activists and citizen journalism, what concrete legal protections will you champion for as
We will
president?
reverse some of this legislation because it must give effect. Legal effect can only happen through legislation. Recently, William Ruto's administration brought the cybersecurity thing. In fact, it was hidden in what is called the omnibus legislation. There's a thing there to make sure what Njeri tried to do, will never happen, right? And they want to bring in there and link that up to national security, which is not necessarily the case, right? So we will reverse those pieces of legislation that have been enacted by the William Ruto administration in a secretive manner, so that the freedoms that we talk about, the freedoms, again, under Constitution 2010, Irungu, we have under Article 43 those basic freedoms as well, and the basic rights. The right to decent housing, not the William Ruto way of doing it, the right not to sleep hungry, right? And we imported the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to Kenya as it is, the 1948 statute. So these are things we will do easily. Again, my training as a constitutional lawyer, as a senior counsel, I really like to talk about myself. But I think Kenyans should really look forward with high expectation to a country that will be run in accordance with the rule of law and a country that will adhere to the principles of constitutionalism. So we do not end up in the situation what is currently the issue, constitutionalism, a constitution without constitutionalism.
And to end on the issue of youth and justice, so elections come, and beyond elections, the youth feel, unheard after elections. Now, in your government, if Kenyans elect you as president, which concrete measures will you have to actually include these young people in governance? And this may be through offering permanent seats. Will you include the youth in budget processes? Will will you include the youth in election reforms? Because we have elections, and after elections, the youths are unheard, yeah, and they are growing frustrated, right? So how will you include the Kenyan youth, the young people, the young professionals who are very frustrated, and with commercial politics, most of them don't have even the bandwidth to even finance campaigns. So how will you include them? In your
I tell you,
government?
we know what we will do with the young Kenyans. First of all, even on those oversight institutions that we talked about, like IPOA, youth representation is a must, will be a must, right? But of course, even the youth themselves cannot say just because you are young, Irungu, right, you must get there. Well, you look at you, a young person, PhD, right, with ability and understanding of what human rights challenges are. You have to find your space, okay? We will go out of their way. And in the area of elections, we know a lot of youths are not able to afford even the nomination fees charged by political parties. I can tell you, my own political party, as party leader of Wiper Patriotic Front, and by the way, before coming here, I was elected actually the coalition chair.
Congratulations.
The coalition party leader of Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. I'm taking over effectively from our late brother, Raila Odinga. And the coalition chair is former president, fourth president of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, who chaired that. Now, as a party leader then, I want to assure Kenyans that we will make sure those of them with ability to win votes, because not every youth, yeah, because you need to understand your electorate, and not every youth can run there and win an election. Those ones with a gift, we will nurture them, we'll grow them into leadership, we'll mentor them. Mentoring is very important. And therefore, they should not worry about paying 20,000 shillings nomination fee in cases where we think they are needy and they are popular. And these days, through artificial intelligence, very easy to know Irungu is very popular. Who doesn't know, for example, how popular Babu Wino is, a member for Embakasi East? If Babu had money or no money, everybody look at him, the youths have a lot of confidence in him. So, and many others like Babu Wino. Of course, that's not a good example because Babu Wino now can afford to pay his nomination fees. But we will make sure that we look at those youths with the ability to lead, with the talent, so that we prepare them to take over leadership of their own country. No, nobody wants to hear about your leaders of tomorrow. No. They have to take their responsibility now. After all, they have become world famous for going for change. Friends here are reminding me that, of course, in terms of oversighting, and I think I covered that subject, that Parliament is actually the primary institution dealing with the oversight of government. And of course, that goes even to the county levels. Yeah, we realize that William Ruto's administration has gone out of its way to, if possible, do away with devolution. And we are telling them that cannot happen. That was a major achievement under Constitution 2010. So we will deepen devolution. We will make sure the benefits go down, trickle down to the villages through devolution. Of course, there are issues that are sometimes controversial, whether to do away with CDF, whether to bring around some of these constitutional funds, unless they are made legal. Of course, the Supreme Court, in their wisdom, did adjudicate on some of those matters. But on the whole, we will deepen devolution. We'll make sure nobody messes around. So counties are starved of money. William Ruto's administration was even trying to make sure they control how they do the tendering process. You've heard of people who study, I'm sure you know, even in this university, Kenyans who have done what they call supply chain management. These are people who end up being as managers of procurement processes. Procurement in Kenya has been a big problem. Can you imagine a head of state will take a phone and say, I want that contract, that road contract to go to Rungu and to go to Daktari here, right? That is not the way to do it. Because even counties are now being interfered with, all right? Of course, we have two ladies I celebrate personally, the Auditor General and the Controller of Budget. And we must really celebrate those Kenyan professional ladies. How I wish others could follow that example, these two. And they're able to stand their ground. Not shake a Vungu out of what she has done, all right? Or Akango, I think that is her name, the Controller of Budget. So they strengthen those with ability to bring change to the country.
Thank you for that. You can take a quick break here. All right, so recording.
Okay, so we're gonna shift from youth and justice into education, particularly the curriculum and also how education and Kenyan culture are intertwined. So statistics show us that the Kenyan population, more than 75% of the Kenyan population is under the age of 35, and our youth literacy is actually quite high. Unfortunately, though, only 21% of our youth have formal employment. So previously, the 844 system emphasized on us memorizing skills, and now the competency-based curriculum promises to, change, to transform the Kenyan system, but it still mostly feels and cosmetic. There's new exams, but they're the same foreign frameworks. And for many, what you're learning in school feels quite disconnected from life at home or in your community. And there are a few programs like Studio Mashinani, which is showing potential for youth-led, culturally grounded learning, but this is not what's happening in most classrooms in Kenya. And we're left wondering, this new competency-based curriculum, is it just another polishing of our inheritance of colonial rule, which shows up in our education system? So, as president, tell us more about how you're going to reform the education system to make sure that it decolonizes and detaches from those old ways and actually restores identity for Kenyans and allows our youth to actually get dignified work and skills and knowledge and is rooted in our African way of being and knowing.
Well, Dr. Kenya, that's a loaded inquiry, but I'll try and deal with it. First of all, I was Minister for Education for 3.5 years. And one of the things I remember what I did was I actually outlawed corporal punishment in our schools.
Yes, I remember.
You remember that? So you're a beneficiary. And I also did something under the late Dr. David Koech. Actually appointed him a chair of what we call the David Koech Commission on Education, Reform of Education. And he came up with a report called Ticket, Quality Education. That document should have been referred to by the subsequent commissions, including that of, I think, Professor Munabu, who came up and Ruto's administration to bring in this curriculum-based education. One of our big collaborators by this department, they call it Department of Overseas Development of the UK. Never mind they were colonial masters, that they've always been part of they've been our partners in education. And I know I'll deal with that decolonization aspect, which I find intriguing, because I think we have to decolonize our own minds in order to be able to realize the opportunities in education and what kind of capabilities do we want to bequeath our children.
Right.
Now, on that issue alone, now this CBC thing, look at the outcome. This administration was ill prepared to even implement what they thought was going to be a revolutionary type of education. Right now, it's a disaster. I'll give you an example. William Ruto issued a directive as a president, and going back to colonial way of administration, where you're calling chiefs to arrest people and take them to school. Okay, literally, because parents were not able to take their children to school. They are not able, even as we speak. A lot of them have such burden, and they are torn between taking their children to school and educating the fellow kids back at home. 350,000 year 10, grade 10 students did not get properly transitioned to their senior schools, as they call them. Now we have junior schools and senior schools. It got to a stage where Ruto said, never mind, even if you have no uniform, go out. Can you imagine sending chiefs to go and tell parents to take kids to school? And knowing how much Kenyan parents value education, you must ask yourself, what is the problem? The problem is deep-rooted, and even where they're transitioned to, the teachers are ill-equipped. They do not understand the curriculum itself. By the way, we have a curriculum development institute somewhere based in Pangani, in Gara. Nobody has any idea. Okay, so there's confusion, total confusion. And yet we had laid these in so well under President Kibaki and subsequently even under Uhuru. I think Uhuru even tried to introduce free secondary day schooling. He was moving from now free primary education to free secondary. I hold the view that when we take over, we will make sure that from the cradle, that's a nursery school level, through primary, up to secondary education, it will be free education. When I ran for president in 2007, a lot of people are very skeptical. Say, where will you get the money to do this? Now Kenyans know there's so much money. We're such a resilient economy that the cartels that have been stealing, right, from the Kenyan economy, the amount of money they have stolen is enough to educate our children through university and then also prepare them for employment. All right? Not everything about CBC is actually bad. The thinking may have been good, but we also, because that time under David Koech as Minister for Education, the clarion call by parents were, we are overburdening our children because of what you're saying, cramming, trying to memorize and to do things. And so parents were saying, hey, too much study and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Right? That's a common saying. So you also need time for kids to play. You want kids, this is why I personally like this idea of learning to swim. A lot of swimming pools are coming from everywhere, all over the country. I never learned how to swim myself. Yeah. I can only float. Okay. It's a good thing. Yeah. But is it also an examinable subject? We need also to make sure we do not reduce the quality of our education. So we will revisit this matter of William Ruto's approach to education, reform of our education system. And the whole thing goes up to university. Our universities, a lot of them are almost shutting down. You see? And if you look at the living conditions in the halls of residence of our public universities, and I'm talking from one of them here, right? Students cook in their rooms. So the whole thing is a mess. And then when they eventually qualify, there are no jobs for them. University student leavers, university leavers are seen sometimes as the only job they can do is to get a motorbike, get a motorbike about the border and ride around and make a living. That's why you've seen a proliferation of borders. It was President Kibaki and ourselves who, by the way, liberalized this assembly of motorbikes in order to make it easy for Kenyans to move around. But now it's become, see, you don't want Kenyans to just be there, graduates, just using borders. You need to move to the next stage. I remember when I first visited Beijing as a minister, it was like Nairobi. So many motorbikes. You go to Beijing now, you hardly can see any motorbikes. People have now transitioned to these other things. The whole thing is about unemployment itself as a consequence of corruption. Corruption in government, misrule, corruption, and then hopelessness. That is what the country is going through. But I want to tell Kenyans never to lose hope. We are gearing ourselves to correct the situation.
So tell us more about tangible, actionable steps, tangible policy you're going to implement to actually get Kenyans there. So it's not just about making sure that, people are learning about African history, they're learning the languages, they're learning indigenous knowledge, but it's also about making sure that what they're learning in the classroom is actually applicable when they get out there, right? Because I think right now...
history is important, right? That's why, we have to... I was good in arts and I knew my mind was not good. I mean, you're an engineer. I had no idea. Maybe it's because of where I come from. When I first went to Form 1, and then I was taken to a chemistry lab, I almost took off. Something called Bunsen burner and things. Coming from Sekura, I said, this is another world. Okay, so orientation. But let me be very clear. We also should be very proud of who we are. We should be proud of, there can be serious and there will be unity in our diversity. The fact that you have 43 nationalities living together as a country, God was not unfair to make people speak Kikuyu, others Kikamba, others Kijaluo, others Kikalenjin, right? We are therefore a wonderful country. So we must also remember history, the heroes, yeah, like the famous lady from Kwale, Makatile wa Menza, or people like fellow was slaughtered by the British, the Nandi leader, all right? And others, women, Sakamba Shia calls Syokimau. You go to Nairobi, you see Syokimau something station, and of course, our modern heroes who brought us independence, Dedan Kimathi and others. Those heroes who brought independence. If we don't teach our children where they have come from, we will be doing grave injustice. And yet we must also make them citizens of the modern world. So we must therefore get a balance. We try to get a balance on how to move about this. Those who are good in science must continue. Those who are good in arts must also be encouraged. Performing arts, for example, the whole area of creativity. You hear of Bollywood. Indians have come up with Bollywood. And of course, you have Hollywood in this country. The Nigerians came up very strongly, right? We want to encourage young Kenyans to develop their talents as well. Growing up, our national theater, for example, national theater is hardly... You look at people like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who is one of our heroes in the area of literature and thinking. And in fact, Ngugi wa Thiong'o believed that we decolonize our mind and we'll be better citizens. Okay, so those are all important to develop a holistic personality. Will be the modern Kenyan. Very proud to belong. And when I was coming here, first thing that caught my mind was looking around. Even Americans are actually putting flags proudly, American flags in their residences. According to William Ruto, it's only his ministers who should go, waving the national flag. Now, Gen Z is taught him it is not the same. We're all very proud of our national emblems, our national flag. But in the case of the US, you don't see barricaded homes. Yeah, I mean, honestly, see, you can walk around and whatever, but in Kenya, in Nairobi, what do you see there? Because we have a population that is feeling the pain of being stolen from. They say, if you're stealing from us, we also now will steal from you. Now, that is how desperate Kenyans have become. So we must get ourselves back so the Kenyans can be everybody's brother's keeper, and you see crime rates going down because there will be employment. Unless we deal with the problem of unemployment, this is why I go back to the question of the youth. Yeah. And giving my own example again, I went to parliament as a youth. The problem is when you get old people going to parliament, right? And they're retired, they're looking at it as a hobby. I am not against men and women who get elected to position because of that. But mainly you find a lot of them are using their wealth to bribe voters. When I went to parliament, there was the maximum amount you were allowed to spend in an election campaign. And that was 30,000 shillings. All right? Of course, 30,000 then was a lot of money in 85. And I ran there. I ran in 83. I lost. So I want to encourage young Kenyans. Come out now. Run for this elective post. Don't be so angry that you cannot, you say, now give up this thing. Now, we heard from the Electoral Commission. They're going to start mass voter registration on the 29th of March. I want to urge young Kenyans to come out, register as voters. Mm-hmm. We know that in certain cases, because data is everything, we know that William Ruto's administration wants to suppress young people taking out identity cards from areas that they perceive will not vote for them. We will tell them no. Just like we went to see the Inspector General of Police, we'll go and see the Registrar of Persons. There must be equity in the issuance of. It is every young Kenyan's right to take out an ID, and after taking out an ID, register as a voter. That is the weapon that you can use to change your country. And go out there and also utilize your, come out again and vote. So I just wanted to encourage, because people think unless you have millions and millions of shillings, you can't run for elective post. We're changing this.
So bringing it back to education, there's a lot of government reports that thousands of classrooms are being built, textbooks are being distributed, but the teachers remain untrained. There's resources shortages, rising costs. So again, how will you ensure that these inequalities between counties and also between income levels are addressed in our
I think we
schools?
stress, Dr. Kenywa, meritocracy, even in education and the conduct of education. I told you we'll have a lot of work to correct what the mess that William Ruto has caused in the education sector. In the education sector, the mess in the health sector, right? And the mess in the housing, what he calls affordable housing. But education is so basic, so important, right? We just have to get our kids to go back to school. We must make sure every Kenyan parent feels it's important to get my kids educated to the highest level possible. Now, do you know that even our university lecturers, I hardly ever paid. For the first time, they came out demonstrating until they came up to some kind of arrangement. Even the level of university education, The right to education, by the way, is a basic human right. That cannot be negotiated, right? And so, there was a declaration. I was Minister of Education, went to a place in I think it was in Thailand, the Jomtien declaration on universal education and lifelong learning. Even you as a doctor, I'm sure you know that concept of lifelong learning. But let us at least get the basics. The basics are even to go to university in Kenya, right? We used to have the Higher Education Loans Board. And William Ruto has come up with a mix that even he himself does not seem to understand. He called a meeting with the young people at the KICC to try and have a conversation with him on the funding model. The net effect is students from poor families are not managing to get to university.
So give us like a tangible example of a policy that you're going to implement.
Of course, we will get back Higher Education Loans Board. I actually started it when I was Minister of Education. I appointed the first chief executive, who I think as we speak is the current governor of Baringo County. Yeah, he was the first CEO. Even William Ruto benefited from what you used to call boom, at least that. And we will do that. We will restore this. That's practical. It must, within the first year, we must straighten our education system again. That is a commitment.
And now, talking of education, the young people in Kenya get educated. They leave school, but there's no employment, which actually brings us to a very pertinent issue in our next theme, which is youth, labor, and employment. So currently what we've been seeing, about nearly 70% of the Kenyan youths are unemployed, and also some of them are in informal work. Now, we've been seeing currently, current regime, most of our young Kenyans, and I'll specifically say like women, so they are leaving to go to the Gulf out of desperation. And when they go out there to the Gulf, and even some Kenyan young men are going to fight in Russia. It's a current issue right now in Kenya.
Seen a young Kenyan dying in the war in Ukraine.
So with this issue of labor, with this issue of unemployment, when elected president, because what it seems is that we are exporting our youth to modern day slavery in the Gulf, and others are going to die in Russia. So as president, what's your full strategy to create, number one, a dignified and also a sustainable employment for the youth of Kenya?
My friend, this is a very heavy matter.
It is.
We have what we call the youth budge, not just in Kenya, but Africa. But in Kenya, because of education policy hitherto, before William Ruto messes it up, we produce quality people. And I mentioned earlier on that they are not able to get employment. You may recall that I was asked to co-chair what we call NADCO, National Dialogue Committee, along with member for Kikuyu, I think, Kimani Chungwa, and we made a report. We had representation from our professional bodies on what should actually happen. Do you know that during that time, that was immediately before the Gen Z revolution, after the 2023 high cost of living, Kenyans are suffering even as we speak. Over 6,000 companies in Kenya closed shop and were looking for opportunities in Tanzania, mainly Tanzania and Uganda. What does that effectively mean? Those jobs now got exported to the region. The first thing is to make manufacturing a top priority. Top priority. You've seen Donald Trump here try to bring in investment, saying make America great again, all right? And we're really thinking in terms of bringing investment to America. It's very easy to attract. When you have credible leadership, corruption-free, you will see that within the first 2 years, we will bring in so many companies back to Kenya. And then they bring in what is called FDI, foreign direct investment. That is how we will begin to go to the industrial area. And with that, of course, we will begin what I famously called when I ran for president first time, a 24-hour economy. So that there will be young Kenyans working during the daytime and others during nighttime, and grow economy leaps and bounds. I met Senator Coons yesterday, and I thanked him. He's a senator for Delaware here. It's the one I think who took over from President Biden when he became president. And Donald Trump has been able to extend AGOA. I'm sure you've heard of the story of AGOA, which was introduced by President Bill Clinton in order to promote manufacturing in Africa. We have EPZs in the river and other places. We need these economic zones. We need to be very direct, very deliberate about attracting investment in this area so that we can have people working, right? Of course, they now only 1 year is not good enough. We told them at least give us 10 years extension of AGOA. That's one of the things that I will be even talking to this administration of Donald Trump to extend AGOA. Because when they did away with USAID, a lot of countries were affected, including our own, even under World Health Organization, serious challenges in that area. But on the whole, it behoves us as a nation to get our act together. What has happened is William Ruto has ruined the economy of Kenya, and with it, huge youth unemployment. And he doesn't seem to know how and what to do. We'll have to reduce the cost of, for example, production. Cost of production is what will bring investors. We belong to that economic bloc called COMESA, Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. You know, a country like Egypt is a member. And a lot of companies get attracted to go and manufacture in Cairo as opposed to Nairobi, because the cost of electricity in Kenya is impossible. And yet, under Kibaki and ourselves, we had, for example, said a very important project called the High Ground Force on the River Tana, which was going to create, not only give us an extra 700 megawatts of electricity, but was going to bring capacity to irrigate all that those large swathes of land covering Garissa, Tana River counties, Kitui County, right? Literally transform that region for agriculture and also give us cheap electricity. I saw William Ruto going to the inauguration of Ethiopian dam, Renaissance Dam, which is producing 5,000 megawatts of electricity. He cannot even agree to do the 700 megawatts. And yet there were investors from the UK ready to do this. But because he must give it to his friends, he's dragging his feet. Maybe I should not be saying some of these things, but they are very painful. Okay. These are very painful truths. So we will bring down the cost of production, and we bring in and predictable taxation. That is, this is the unclogging we'll have to do. And you talk about, Dr. Kenywa, practical things. This is absolutely practical, all right? So that we unclog this space and bring now investment in manufacturing, our textile industries. You know, we still import cotton from Tanzania. We could be growing a lot of cotton.
Because talking about this issue of the river.
Oh, you talked about that. I didn't answer that.
Yeah.
Now, you know, a country, the Philippines.
Exactly.
The Philippines. You find a lot of Filipinos working in a lot of countries. But they do it in an organized manner. Migrant protection, and then you get externalization. Now, here in the US, for example, we know Kenyans in the diaspora, right? The remittances from Kenyans working abroad have actually surpassed our earnings in the last 2 years our earnings from coffee and tea. Right? So this is very valuable thing. What William Ruto was attempting to do was to think he can just push our single mothers. And when we were campaigning for Raila and Mother Karua, we were saying we'll be giving Kenyans at least 6,000 shillings per month. We will look after a Kenyan category of parents called single mothers. These are the ones who are so vulnerable. And they're very anybody coming, and by the way, there was a big expose by the BBC team, I think it was, showing how even in the area of arranging how Kenyans can go work abroad, there's a cartel under the Ministry of Labor or some fellow there involved. And then they're actually encouraging slave labor. We cannot accept that. So we must then have properly negotiated contracts where our embassies are involved, say in Riyadh, for example, our embassies in the UAE and other places, and in a dignified manner, like of course is happening. If you look at these international airlines like Qatar and Emirates, a lot of Kenyans. I was flown by a Kenyan pilot called Captain Kibet, flying an Emirates flight. And you look at at that level, very dignified labor. But not this other one. You taking people, you take them to households. They even use for slave, not only slave loves, even sexual slavery, which is terrible because their IDs are taken away, their passports are taken away, and people don't even know where their loved ones are.
So
This is actually this is almost criminal on the part of this administration.
Yes. And let's maybe get to the reason why people are putting up with such slave-like or modern-day slavery
Yes.
conditions.
Mm.
Because anyone would rather stay home with their family and their community. So it's one thing to transform the immigrant worker protections and make sure if people do decide to go, they're being treated with dignity. But really the goal, as I see it, should be to create jobs
At home.
within Kenya so
Yeah,
that
the
people
environment.
don't have to leave. So tell us about, and I'm all about the tangible policy, the infrastructure that you will develop to actually grow the economy so that at a county level you have public works, you have manufacturing, you have the green economy. Tell us about tangible policies you will set in place that will set up the infrastructure.
I think it will be possible to have, Dr. Kinyua, for every county, at least a functioning, high-yielding factory, which gives employment opportunities to the locals, including the national. But in certain areas, we have a mineral wealth, which is unexploited. When I listened to President Donald Trump during his intervention at the National Prayer Breakfast, he said plainly that by encouraging Rwanda and the DRC to come to Washington and sign the peace agreement, American companies are also looking at the critical minerals in the DRC. Minerals like cobalt and whatever. In Kenya, we have a lot of these things. In Murima Hills in Kwale, for example, right? If we could do value addition, we will not allow a situation where people just come, take away the minerals without value addition. These opportunities exist, and it is possible really as we bring in, because it has to take the form of foreign direct investment. Yeah, if they come in, set the economic conditions right. And I say that infrastructure is very important. All right, that infrastructure itself of resetting that country's economy needs a resetting, and that's what we shall do as soon as we take over.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our fourth theme on health, specifically mental health in Kenya. right now, and we all know health is not just about how many hospitals you have. Health is about wholeness and wellness, having a good quality of life. And right now, Kenyan youth are really breaking under the weight of untreated trauma, addiction, and there is violence, specifically gender based violence, that's rising. But the places to go to talk about depression, anxiety, any mental health related issues are few, underfunded, and out of reach. And yet, counties are reporting up to 60% drug use among the youth. And there's a statistic, I hope this is not true, but this is the statistic we found, that in a population of Kenya, we're what, almost 50 million people, we only have 54 psychiatrists. And there is a Kenyan health policy, but it's outdated, there's silence, there's still stigma. And so there can be a plan on paper, but again, the youth need something more tangible. So tell us more about your policy, your tangible approach. If you're given the presidency by the people, how you will serve them in terms of accessing mental health care, substance abuse treatment, any trauma services, and again, usually for those people that are left behind.
Hurry up, hurry up.
Okay, got it. All right, let's go. Action.
Thank you. The matter of mental health in our country has become a critical issue. And I think I would agree that indeed we have very few psychiatrists. If they're only 54, compare that to, I think now we're almost hitting over 5,000 lawyers, I think many. Of course, the issue of teachers, if I could go back there. That's when I was talking about meritocracy. You find that to be employed as a teacher in Kenya today, you have to get an UDA-friendly MP to go to State House to get a letter of appointment. It is terrible. Where we have a Teacher Service Commission, which is supposed to oversee all these things. So they are also captured. But you may have heard of a senator who was nominated by White Papa Church Farm called Sylvia. She served in the last Senate. She was bold and came up with legislation on the issue of mental health. And a lot of Kenyans said, oh, wow, what is this? I can tell you that one of the leading psychiatrists is Dr. Frank Jenga. You may have heard of him.
Yes.
And we are facing a crisis in that area. But it's all part of the holistic problem we are facing as society, a state of hopelessness, unemployment, which leads to drug abuse. So if we get conditions right, the basics right again, we reset our country, you may find that the consequence of that action will mean a more balanced society at the household level, because you see, parents do not know what to do when kids have gone to university, they're looking for employment. I can tell you, though I'm not a serving member of parliament, my own friends do not know. So they come and say, tusaidie mtoto apate kazi ya walimu, sijui nini. It is terrible. It's all about favoritism. We have to reset the Kenyan state, including our health, because you see, Kenya can very easily become a health destination. Then you have health-related tourism, like is happening with so many of Kenyan patients going to India. And you go to those Indian hospitals, you begin to wonder, why can't we set this up? I think it will therefore become a priority because, again, Kenya is actually host to an international community. I hope you realize that apart from New York, Vienna, and Geneva, the fourth and the other UN headquarters country is Kenya. And the population of diplomats has been growing. During COVID time, Nairobi Hospital collaborated with the World Health Organization or something, United Nations, to set up that hospital, which was dealing with the diplomats in our country. It is very easy to reset that. But as we do so, there was nothing basically wrong with National Hospital Insurance Fund, which, as I said, you heard me talk about SHA, which was replaced by Social Health Assurance. And what there was an element of 104 billion Kenya shillings, which must go to the Adani Group. Clear corruption. And every Kenyan will tell you this SHA is not working. And if you cannot have a healthy nation, including, of course, mental patients, you have a nation that is mourning. This is why biblically, and I've come from a prayer breakfast here. Yeah, the Bible talks about when the righteous in authority, people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, people mourn. There's a lot of mourning in our country. But we have to set it right. We have no option but to set it right.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have Dr. Kenya walk us through our last theme, which is climate. Then, thank you for your
Okay.
Yes. So we'll close on climate, and specifically the false solutions that we've heard, and as Kenya, our need to fight for ecological sovereignty. So, climate change is not about just about carbon, which is, the solutions that are being sold to Kenyans and, across Africa are usually foreign-backed solutions. There's genetically modified seeds, seeds that would require just specific companies, very input-heavy solutions such as carbon credits, which means selling our forest to other countries in just the way the whole carbon credits thing works, or other false solutions such as the nuclear power plant that's been championed along the coast of Kenya. These things are being marketed as progress, but when you really look into them, one, they cause ecological harm. They're depending on foreign ideas of solutions, while Kenyans in Africa generally is just being used, and we end up in a lot of debt. And they are not rooted in the realities of what's going on in Kenya or Africa. They're rooted in somebody else calling it climate action, liberation, but it's just another mask for exploitation. So tell us more about, if voted for as president, how will you ensure that Kenya's environmental and climate agenda is not hijacked by foreign interests, pushing false solutions instead of actually centering ecological sovereignty, actually having our youth be part of innovation and resiliency?
Thank you, Dr. Kinyo. This whole area of climate change is a very big subject. A lot of conversation has gone into this. When I was Minister for the Environment, and a lot of Kenyans will have forgotten, it was then that Professor Wangari Maathai won the Nobel Peace. And I took her to Norway to receive that award because I was a minister. And I remember saying to people out there, I am the only minister in the world with the dubious distinction of having a deputy who is more famous than the minister. I remember I used to say that. And because Wangari Maathai and I work very closely, and there's quite a lot. And I remember, and Kenyans don't know how to celebrate some of their best. This was to us an icon. So Professor Angari will give the example of the hummingbird, where big forest caught fire and the big animals were watching, doing nothing, the lions, the elephants, and the little hummingbird decided to take action. And she will go to some, with her little wings, go get some water, come and try to put out the fire. So the big animals say, what in the world are you trying to do? She said, at least I'm trying to do something. You big guys are doing nothing. Now, that conversation by Professor Angari Maathai rings fresh. People must try to do something. Climate resilience. Of course, we hold the view that those who do the pollution, the polluters must pay. But as you are saying, they have taken advantage. And now they look at countries, third world countries like Kenya. A lot of Kenyans don't know that William Ruto has sold off our air to Gulf countries. Yes, for millions of shillings and dollars. Even the air we are breathing has been auctioned. So there is a lot of trouble in that space. We still have a lot of work to set it right. And we got some lawyers to go to court on this matter of genetic engineering. Under President Kibaki, we were very, very cautious about allowing foods that are genetically modified. Those genealogy, that whole space. And even if you must bring in GMOs, every Kenyan has a right to know when you go to the supermarket, this particular food is GMO, this one is organic. I personally like organic farming. I heard you, Daktari, you're a farmer. I think you can agree with me that this is the best way to keep healthy. Because you see, although I read that life expectancy in the US now is 79, is gone up, but if you combine hunger, frustration, mental anguish, unemployment, poverty levels, then you are giving people genetically modified food. What are you trying to do? To decimate our population? We say no. So this particular area is very, very important. We need, as you say, ecological sovereignty. We do not anybody coming to exploit our basic resources. Say, number one consideration, value addition. Not just come and take everything and disappear. But then, having said that, it looks to us that this challenge of climate change is real. At the prayer breakfast, we were told that this family, I think in Tennessee, young kids in a camp were carried off. And because the river rose to levels that are never expected. As we speak, the northern districts of Kenya, of Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, and parts of Kitui, Tana River, Isiolo, Marsabit, we are losing our livestock. And there are thousands, adding to those already compounded problems I'm talking to you about. And one can argue, oh, but we've had all these things before. But the intensity of the challenge now, we used to have rains around October, November. In that region, the rains in October, November, seasonal rains are normally okay. But now, nothing, absolutely nothing. And this government is completely at a loss to know how to deal with that situation. Well, if it is climate related, and of course also dumping of some toxic stuff in our country, we have to be a lot more vigilant. It's not every manufacturer in this area of nuclear energy, for example, clean energy is the talk of the day, clean energy. Getting our motorbikes now able to go and charge and keep going to reduce the pollution in Nairobi, for example. You know, Beijing used to be the headquarters of pollution, but they did something about that, the capital city of the People's Republic of China. But even as we bring in this clean energy thing, there's a lot of confusion, competing interests in that space, right? So we must be able to dissect and see what is in the best interest of Kenya. Nuclear energy in Kwale, Kilifi, was very controversial. And I think the residents have stopped it. I think they were trying to say, do it somewhere else in Siaya. I hope Governor James Orengo is watching that space as well. So we recognize that as members of the world community and the globalization aspect of it, although now I'm seeing in the political realm a lot of rearrangements taking place. Countries are thinking more of themselves. Europe has become a lot more inside-looking, nationalistic. National parties out there are beginning to gain currency and rightist movements. And where we are here, Americans are looking more towards themselves. I think we need, as Africa, to begin to know that the time for Africa is now. And our resources, which are unparalleled anywhere in the world, right, must first of all be for the benefit of our people. I started by talking about the cobalt deposits in the DRC, which American companies are eyeing. Yeah, but you will be interested to know that the committee dealing with energy at the Senate and National Assembly were taken to some place in Mombasa and being now acclimatized to seeing how 600 trucks will be moving the oil or crude oil from Turkana to Mombasa. Imagine the environmental damage that will cause, right? And yet we had made it clear under Kibaki that under LAPSET project, which was going to be based in Lamu, right? We developed that infrastructure so that we'll do a pipeline from our oil wells in Turkana through the port of Lamu. But William Ruto is proposing because in a hurry to get money and get it in, I don't know how much money they require. Okay? So these are issues, all environmentally related. There's a big subject which we should continue to further interrogate. But as a country to remain vigilant, that not all our friends want to participate in that space mean well, even for our welfare.
So would you reverse some of these carbon credits reforms? You elected president, would you reverse some of
We will revisit them. I cannot say we'll reverse them, right? Because I don't promise to do what Donald Trump did, pulling out of a lot of these things. Okay. Because I think they didn't believe there was such a thing as climate change. But I think there must be a midway. The midway is we have our experts. You know, the whole thing about science, we must have a science-driven economic growth. Therefore, research in health is vital. And I'm so happy that young Kenyans like you are becoming experts in some of these areas, like in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, engineering, right? So we will rely on young experts and our older experts to make sure that we get the correct policy orientation, even in the area of climate change. Having said that, I remember I was the host of the 10th Convention on Climate Change. And after that, we went to Argentina, where I was mugged, actually. And from Argentina, the whole thing went, and then Paris, and I now see America has pulled out of the Climate Change Convention. There's a lot that needs to be done in this area.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I think before we end now on talking about the youth, since this was a youth centric actually conversation, Dr. Kalonzo Musyoka, tell us about, we want to know about you, and also when it comes to the Kenyan youth, Maybe is there any youth influencer in Kenya you can tell us about, or maybe is there anything that you can tell us more about the youth culture in Kenya, and that maybe the young Kenyans can maybe get to hear from you?
Someone that
Something
you
that
follow
inspires
or
you.
inspires you.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Is
Are
there
you-
a
are you
youth
that inspires me?
influencer that
Yeah.
Influencer.
or you
Look at that
follow?
Jerry, for example. We need to look at that lady.
Okay, Angel.
There are several. There are quite a number of young people in arts,
Yep.
in sports, yeah, and of course our sportsmen and women are amazing. And we are a superpower when it comes to that. Not so well in soccer, but we are trying to get ourselves up because it's a big thing.
Yep.
When you talk to Kenyans, they will tell you, oh, they are either Arsenal, or Man U, or
Yeah.
Chelsea.
I'm Chelsea.
I tell them I'm the patron of Sofapaka.
Oh,
Sofapaka Batoto Bamungu. At least to try and bring them and the Harambee Stars.
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Of course, in 2027, we will be co-hosting along with Tanzania and Uganda, the next challenge, African Cup
Of Nations.
Cup of Nations. I'm sure it will be exciting time. But we need to look at these other youth people in the spaces that are critical, right? When it comes to influencing young people, I think I should have been one of them. Look, go into parliament single. I wasn't married when I was elected member of parliament. Okay, It is possible to do it. I ran in 83 and lost and felt so bad about it. I said, God, what is this? Right? For me, I looked at what I've been doing in politics and leadership as a calling. Because if it was not a calling and God-given calling, it could not even have succeeded. Because I went in there, lost in 83, had one little car which I bought at 29,000 shillings. A second-hand car from my employer. Yeah, I remember that because I was working for Comcraft Services. Imagine, armed with only that car, registration number KPZ 079, right? We covered a constituency called Kitui North, which was almost the size of Central Province as it then was. So with determination and a vision, you can do it. So our young people, I keep on encouraging you because then I have young ones now in my family, okay? And one of them is a human rights defender like you. She's just gotten a PhD in international human rights, right? So we encourage them. But there are lots of them in the social space. There's a lady here called Pauline Deroga. She has such a following in the social media. Whatever Pauline posts there is immediately taken up. Of course, there are others like what is this lady in Jaoko? Maverick.
On X.
Maverick on X.
Yeah.
She posts one thing,
Yeah.
it's likely to influence a lot of people.
Correct.
So we need them to come up. And they're sometimes critical of what is happening. And therefore they become the conscience of our society. Let's encourage them.
Okay.
There's a little boy we got out of prison. He wants to run for Senate in Embu. Boniface, what was his name? Bill Mwangi. His father came and shed tears in court. He said, I thought I was going to find my son here. Where is he? He was just abducted.
Yep.
Abducted from I think a
Getting
barber
a
shop.
haircut. Yep.
Little fellows like those. See, they look determined and they're going to make a change. We have a duty to make the country good for them.
Last question. What is one truth or commitment you want every Kenyan to remember from this conversation?
One truth or comment
Commitment.
or commitment
From this conversation.
that we are determined to get our country back on course. A country to believe in the rule of law. A country that will honor its youth, not get them killed. I can tell you, Abductions will be history. Abductions are inhuman. Goonism, because this affects the youth. So I want the youth to know I'm very passionate about making sure their future is secure. You know, one little girl called Bridget, what on Bridget Joki was watching television from the comfort of her parents' house outside Kiambu. And because it was the second anniversary of the Gen Z's revolution, police were firing anywhere, completely out of Kiambu town. And Bridget was shot with a stray bullet. We cannot allow that. So my take is we are determined to reset the country and to realize a change that has been avoiding Kenya. Evading Kenya, hijacked by cartels. My sister Mother Karua likes to call it led by Majambazi. I think the word is Jambazi, it's Majambazi, and she has come out very strong on that. So we're going to be okay. So my commitment is we must reclaim our country. Reclaim it. It's not going to be easy, but I give my commitment and we are going to do it. God willing.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us for this interview and also taking time out of your busy schedule. The young people of Kenya will listen to you and thank you for your vision. So they get your message and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wish you well.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us in this cold weather.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes, and thank you for making the time.
When are you back to Kenya?
Maybe in another 4-6 months.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
If you find it difficult, you can be a dual citizen. We have to put that possible in the constitution.
yeah.
I think citizens, I like of the calm. This thing about Kenyans, they want visas.
Yeah.
And I think that, used to be told, go study, like you're doing here, rudi nyumbani, jenga taifa.
Yes.
You can do this from when.
Tutakuja kufanya kazi ukiwa president. We'll come and
Yeah.
work.